Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Henderson, and I would like to welcome you to the Fourth Branch Podcast. This podcast exists because we strongly believe that the free exchange of ideas is what makes us who we are. We also believe that the very concept of the free exchange of ideas is under terrible assault. During today's episode, we will be discussing the idea of resource insecurity. Is there really a shortage of good food and drinkable water? Is the world really so overpopulated that the existing resources are not enough to feed, clothe, and house all of us? What are the reasons that in such a highly technological age that we are unable to provide the basics to everyone? Is the environment and or environmental degradation to blame? Are we really looking in the correct directions for ways to mitigate or even eliminate these problems? How will we be able to freely discuss these questions and really try to solve these problems if all of the discussion is regulated by political positions and partisan viewpoints? Do we really actually have a problem with life-sustaining and growth-producing resources at all? This is what we will be discussing today, and we hope that this discussion will inspire you to do some research for yourself and make some conclusions for yourself. You are the authority in your life, and everyone's opinion matters. And as much as we enjoy sharing our own conversations here at the Fourth Branch Podcast, we'd rather have you be a part of them. If you have a topic you're passionate about and would like to be a guest on the show, we'd love to have you on anytime. Again, welcome to the Fourth Branch Podcast. Real topics, real people. Welcome to the conversation.
Welcome to the Fourth Branch Podcast. My name is Atal Osama. I am here with my co-host Brian Henderson. How's you doing, sir?
Very good, very good. Good to be here.
All right, man. So we're going to have a conversation today about a topic I think is really, really fascinating and something I borrowed from you from a earlier conversation that we've had, and that is this idea of resource scarcity and how real is that? And with your education and experience, I thought you might have some real good insight as to how real it is, what the real nature of it is, and what might drive what some might consider to be propaganda around this idea that, the sky is falling and we're running out. We need to care for ourselves. So I want to start you there. Can you share some of your insight and your feeling as far as to how real is that concern in your view?
Sure. This is a very intense topic as far as I'm concerned, because it does concern, the people on our planet. It concerns real living people who are trying to have enough to eat, trying to have enough energy to use to heat their homes, to cook their food.
Yeah.
So it's if I had to sum it up, I would say big factors involved in this are non-genuine attempts at mitigating the problem that have names like, combating food insecurity, combating food insecurity, especially, in the quote unquote third world. I say that any group or company that still uses the phrase third world kind of tells you a little bit about their thought processes when they're trying to help people. It doesn't really matter where on the world you are. There's only one world as far as they keep telling us.
Sure.
They really keep hammering that home. There's only one world, and we need to be united. So yeah, I'd say there's disingenuous efforts. I would say some of the efforts that may be genuine on the part of the very, very, very intelligent people who are trying to fix things don't have positive effects, and in fact have negative effects. It's just that there's so much money involved that no one is hitting the brakes or saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't go in that direction.
So do you think there's a profitable enterprise in suggesting that resources are scarce, or are resources actually scarce and we've established a model to benefit from that scarcity?
I think it's a combination of both. Like, for example, is there money to be made? The food scarcity, quote unquote, food scarcity thing has been used kind of like homelessness. Millions and millions of people are homeless in cities, single cities in this country. And there are billions of dollars thrown at organizations that are designed to ostensibly help with that problem. However, the problem has not gone away. And in fact, it has increased as a problem. It's grown as a problem. And it almost seems, and I speak anecdotally here, but I know that there's some numbers behind it. It almost seems like the more money you throw at it, the worse the problem gets. And it's turned into the same thing with food insecurity. Namely, GMOs are supposed to save the planet, feed just ask the people of rural India and Africa how much GMOs have helped them. Ask farmers in America and in Europe how much GMO seed has helped them to lose their farms, lose the ability to farm. And
for the benefit of our audience, can you explain a little bit about what GMOs are?
GMOs are genetically modified organisms. And as a side note, you got to be careful when you're looking at the supermarket nowadays, because they don't even necessarily have to mark genetically modified organisms as GMO anymore.
Gotcha.
But it's genetically modified organisms, and the most famous one I can speak to was created such that it renders seeds one generational. Meaning the plants that are created, the fruit, the trees that are created from these seeds don't bear any more seeds. And they're genetically modified. Wow. And they call those terminator genes, which I find absolutely entertaining.
Okay. Did not know that.
They call them terminator genes. And it makes it so that all of the farmers are beholden to the seed manufacturers, not just the mom and pop farmers market seed people or yourself, where you could just save your own seed and plant your next crop next year. But you're now beholden to the heavily funded food scarcity fighting organizations that hold the patents to your food now. And they've been putting farmers out of business for over a decade because the rules are so bent toward those organizations that if your organic farm is adjacent to a farm that uses this GMO product, you didn't ask for any of that to be in your farm. But if seed blows, now just imagine that. If an animal pollinates this farm, this area over to the right, and then flies over to another farm, that genetic material is now going to be delivered to the farm that was organic. Wow. And they will be, they will be sued then for utilizing the intellectual property of the seed maker. And that has been putting farmers out of business. So that's just one way that this problem is, like you said, it's gone from there wasn't a scarcity to, the U.S. is still throwing away tons and tons and tons of food every year. Most of the quote unquote Western world throws away tons of food every year, allows seed to go bad. But what's happened is slowly but surely, farmers out by the thousands, which means millions of acres, are sitting useless now in this country. Farmers put out of business.
Wow.
Right now in Germany, there is a huge protest that's getting no media coverage. Because the farmers are getting taxed to death. It's their death knell. They're being taxed to death, so that Germany can pay more money towards other things. I'll leave that alone.
Right.
And that's also coming. Price increases are hitting farmers here because of scarcities. Because again, that's our subject: scarcities of fuel and things that are created utilizing natural fuels. We're banning cow farts, to put it more literal. It's like a big joke, is the way people put it, but it's a fact, right? They're putting farmers out of business, saying, well, your livestock is emitting greenhouse gases, and you need to limit that because it's not sustainable. What we need to do is have the same companies and people that own all of the genetically modified substances. They're the same people that are now owning all of the produced genetically modified and scientifically created replacements. I'm going to pause purposely right here. They're the ones creating the scientifically generated replacement, like impossible foods, things such as that. So if the same people that own the seeds that are putting the organic farmers and cattle owners out of business, those are the same people that own what would be put there to replace it and called as sustainable. There's a conflict of interest there, and that's where the greed comes in. It comes to why is Bill Gates the largest owner of farmland in the United States? Why is a software person the largest owner of farmland in the United States? Why does he own a huge percentage of all of the arable land in Africa? And then you add the other organizations that are involved in the genetically modified, the sustainable farming, they're causing shortages. India is a great place to look for anyone who wants to do research because there's billions of people there, but it's still a microcosm of what's going on everywhere. People getting sick because the rice now has no nutritional value. They're unable to use their own land because those same people that own the genetically modified organisms, the same people that own the sustainable farms, they're the same people that put the most money into actions to prevent climate degradation. And when you want to prevent climate degradation, again, you're clamping down on anything natural. I'll leave it to the listeners to research that and make that connection. But that is the case time and time again. What is natural is outlawed, and what is genetically created or engineered becomes the standard for sustainability. They're just not telling you sustain what and who.
Okay. So for obvious reasons, when these types of discussions are had, these are not the avenues that are explored. When someone wants to talk about preservation of resources and sustainability, typically, I'll just speak for myself. Typically, I hear things like reliance on fossil fuels. I hear things like, deforestation or there's, environmental preservation, climate change comes into the argument and the discussion. And when the causes of those issues are raised, oftentimes what I hear are things like, well, we need to, it's a battering ram to limit immigration, for example, right? We don't need an artificial increase in the population, or we don't need GM and Chrysler. We need to get to net zero in fossil fuels so that we can preserve. So if I'm someone that is hearing this and I want to really be able to tell what's what should I be looking at to really get a good sense of how are we doing? And when I say we, I'll start with our local economies and then expand out globally. Where does our food come from, and do we have enough of it? Are we really running out of wood? Is that a concern? Do we need to plant more trees? What's some of the other common ones? We got the Colorado River is running out of water. How much of that is noise, and how much of that are actual concerns that deserve attention? Is it true that if you artificially inflate the population, if you artificially inflate the population, is that going to affect our ability to get bread and peanut butter in 30 years? Is that actual? Are we going to run out of water, drinkable water at some point? Is that actual? Because those are scary prospects, and I can see a nefarious use of those scare tactics. I mean, if it's real, it absolutely deserves our attention. But you didn't say anything about any of those issues. You were talking about this systematic move away from the things that would appear to resolve those issues. So what are your thoughts there? Do you think that there's merit to what the popular arguments are, or should we be looking at something altogether different?
The first thing that I would ask anyone to do when trying to answer the question that you pose is I would ask people to look at who is funding the messages. Now, what you'll find is the same people that are pushing sustainability as a way to heal the environment, as a way to, correct and mitigate food insecurity, are the same people creating the food that is unhealthy, the same people that by mission of action are creating food scarcity as their goals are met. And they are the same people who are allowing the immigration into the country that would even necessitate asking whether or not this would be a good thing. Because obviously, if there is a true food scarcity, a true clean water problem, then adding, 2 million new people to your country per year is probably not a good idea. And that's like,
as the anti-immigrationist would be quick to remind you.
Exactly. And it's kind of, it is a logical argument. It is a rational and reasonable argument. But what it ends up becoming is a surrogate argument, unfortunately, because the true bad guy in it is not the allowing of the people into the country leading to some scarcity. It is the excuse that certain people in our society will be happy to accept as the reason why there is food scarcity. The things they see on their own supermarket shelves, it's not really scarcity we're seeing now, but price increases. Let's stop and think about it. Anybody benefiting from price increases on food, even though the scarcity is not quite there yet? So,
right,
it's got all the telltale signs that you could append to the people that are immigrating here. And if you don't go any further, then it's obvious. You got more people eating, you got less food for everybody. It's too easy, though. What I say to everyone is that's too easy, and it masks the real problem. That if not one immigrant set foot on this land in the last 10 years, we would still be hearing the exact same problems and around the world. What is causing mass immigration also is another issue that, again, it revolves around money. Mass immigration, repatriation, whatever you want to call it, mass exodus from countries all around the world to other countries that have a little more things. It's war. I mean, in almost every case where it's happening, it is war, it is oppression, and it is changes to the political and social environment in countries that make it, ironically, unsustainable for a person to want to have a reasonable life, to have reasonable expectations for their life.
Yeah, immigration will be a great topic, I think, to cover one day. And when I hear someone railing against these illegals, my first question that I like to ask that person, and let me state at the outset, I am not a fan of open borders, right? I think any sovereign nation should be able to control who comes in and out of their country. There should be no debate about that. My concern is more on the human decency sense. My question, my favorite question to ask one of those people is, how bad would things have to be in this country to prompt you and your family to walk to Costa Rica?
Yeah.
And if you consider that, right, I don't think these are transient criminals, because I don't want to go too far off this tangent, but I do see where there does appear to be some politicizing of world events, to benefit certain narratives. And I absolutely agree with you there. I wouldn't call it a surrogate. I would call it a distraction. I don't know, because the reason that they're coming to the United States has absolutely nothing to do. They're not here yet. right? So it has absolutely nothing to do if we're concerned about how many jobs there are. Them coming here have nothing to do with that. If we're concerned about housing, if we're concerned about water and the quality and affordability of education and all of the negative metrics that this uh, artificial influx of people is supposed to create, I agree with your assessment. Those things are completely separate from those people themselves, and to correlate those two, conflate those two rather, and label them, with names does nothing to address what the actual cause is of the. I couldn't agree with you. Agree with you more on that. I wonder though, the more I think about it, it does pass the eye test, right? Bodies of water are smaller than they were 75 years ago. The amount of food that is produced is not the same as it was 100 years ago. Without digging into why, just looking at it on the surface, it's like, wow, it's less and less and less and less and less. It's kind of just a universal truth that coal is limited, oil is limited. Those things aren't going to be available to us forever. And we need to look at some alternatives in order to be sustainable. I guess we're going to be saying that a lot in this discussion. And I think I agree with that basic premise. I think I agree with that. I don't think you can assume that we can just chop down trees forever and ever with impunity without there being any consequence. I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can continue to pull minerals in enormous quantities out of the earth without affecting the composition of soil. That makes sense in my head. Where I get lost is discussion or a comment that you made in one of our previous discussions. We have the ability to address those concerns through science and technology and innovation. And I thought that was something really profound to say, because I think that's what separates us from, the rest of life on this planet. We can address those kinds of things in manners that, plants and animals can't. So I was wondering if you could dig into that a little bit and talk about them. And if we really were going to get serious, instead of using these issues and challenges as political fodder, and we really wanted to start to look at some solutions, are some of the proposed solutions viable in your view, or do you think that we can make sure that there's clean water to drink and make sure that everybody has somewhere to live, and that we're as large a population as we've ever been? Is there a tipping point? Are we close to it? What are your thoughts there?
I think I'll start with the easiest. And in general, they're all easy. That might sound like I said with no humility, or but they're all easy. On a planet that is called Earth, it should be called, by percentage of coverage, it should be called the planet Water. I'll just pause there.
Okay.
And anyone who remembers terrible tragedy that happened in Haiti, I believe maybe in 2009-10 time frame.
Hurricane.
And they did not have any drinkable water. And, well, solution? Well, a bunch of U.S. warships pulled up alongside Haiti, and they started using their water desalination and filtering capabilities to create clean water for the people in Haiti. And they put that on the news as though they knew everyone was going to forget that 13 seconds later.
Right.
Because, it's the technology. That technology is old. You can build something for your own home that can collect rainwater, and you can filter it down cleaner than your local water handling department. I'll put it that way. You can create that by yourself with stuff you can buy from Lowe's, Home Depot, and a couple special stores online.
Wow.
You can create that. The technology, for there to be water scarcity anywhere on Earth, is a tragedy. And it goes back to, again, I hate to mention this guy's name over and over, but it's a fact. Bill Gates has come up with a way to filter wastewater. That's how he's going
Hmm.
to save sub-Saharan Africa from water shortages. When, let's see, he's manufacturing and owns the patents on and has controlling interest in the company that creates the devices that he's saying he's going to use to save Africa. So the nonprofit organizations are going to pay him billions of dollars, or pay his company that he owns billions of dollars to do this. He looks like a great guy, but what those billions of dollars in putting something into these places that is not sustainable will require high amounts of maintenance, will be very expensive, and it should have been spent on infrastructure so that they could have their own wastewater treatment places, just like we have here in America. If we can drink it, why can't they? Why wouldn't you build something? If sustainability is your goal, why wouldn't you build sustainable things? Why would you keep selling them garbage? So that's the water. Another great question you asked is, where does our food come from? More and more, our food comes from factory farming. It comes from glorified factory farming. So it's just like farm-raised fish. When that first stuff, food farm-raised, everybody said, "Oh my gosh, that's healthy. Look, it was raised on a." Wait a second. Why do we need to say that? Aren't all animals raised on a farm? Like, what are we talking about here? And now you're saying farm-raised fish, though? There's fish farms? How do you do that? Well, how you do that is you destroy the quality of the fish. You poison the fish. You don't change the water in the pond. You medicate the heck out of those fish, and you give them all kinds of things that should not be going into the human body, which subsequently is you have 8-year-old girls going through puberty. Okay, I'll just put it out. Not helping anything except for the profits and the bottom lines of people who control those things. If they can control what you eat, if they can control whether or not you get to drink clean water, they control you. I mean, we're human beings. We have to eat and we have to drink water. And I go back to who funds all of this. Who funds all of this sustainability that when you look at the implementation of it, what actually happens, talk to the people who were quote unquote helped and have been being helped for decades by it. You begin to see that they're not being helped and that the major funding sources are these non-governmental organizations like the World Economic Forum and the likes of Klaus Schwab, who say you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Right? That's the world he wants to bring into place. He's already talking about putting chips in your head and all kinds of other crazy stuff. And his minions have infiltrated every level of governments around the world, and he brags about it. Where does our food come from is increasingly less and less sources, and increasingly less and less natural sources. Anecdotal thing, I found out, what was it, about 2 weeks ago, that Bill Gates actually bought the company that creates Bragg apple cider vinegar. Why?
Really?
Why? And it's really it's a no-brainer when you think about it. When you look at everything else, he's the largest owner of farmland in America. He is 100% invested in everything we put into our mouths. And if you listen to him about this, you have to say that you forgot what he said about something else I shall not mention. He had a $50 million investment in something else that was big in our society over the last 2 or 3 years. Big in our society. And he said, you've got to do this, you miscreant, non-thinking, bubble bag of a monkey brain, if you don't do this.
Yeah.
And it's got this list of 10 things it does. He sold his interest in that humongous thing for 10 times the amount of money he invested in it. And right after that, he came out with something else that was administered in a different way, completely. And you know what he said? Oh, all 10 of those things that I said before about the other thing, they're not true. They're not real. We found that they don't do this. They don't do that. It's not real. But I've got this where we are working on this other thing that does. So when a man like that buys your production of food, has controlling interest in organizations that regulate and produce your food, you've got to be on watch. You've got to pay attention. What are the motives of the people that are producing the food? So where does it come from? That's a completely valid necessary question. And who owns where it comes from? Who's invested in where it comes from? Because that's who's ultimately gonna control your dinner table fate.
Right.
Your meat has been the enemy of these people in these non-governmental sustainable organizations for at least 10 years that I've been keeping track. Meat is the enemy. They don't want you to have chicken, fish, beef, pork, none of it. Grass-fed or not. They do not want people to have sources of good, nutritious, protein-filled, enzyme-filled, amino acid-filled meat. Great fatty acids-filled meat. They don't want you to have.
Right.
They want you to have tofurkey. They want you to eat.
Right.
Which not only is just bad for you, I'll put it that way. They want you to eat things that are completely deficient in nutrients. They want you to eat things that are completely controlled by them. Again, why do they have these campaigns around the world now going into elementary schools, preaching to young kids about how you should learn the joys of eating bugs and larvae and things like that instead of meat? Putting it in their heads at a young age that, hey, you little courageous young boy, because you know how we are when we're little. Yeah, I'm not afraid. Using that as a trade-off, then you're a hero. You're saving the earth because you're not scared to eat a beetle for lunch instead of chicken
oh my
drumstick.
goodness.
The same people that told you eat a loaf of bread, but stay away from that egg.
Right.
And heart disease and diabetes and all kind of deadly disorders arose after that. Same people. Okay, I hope I didn't get too far off the question.
Hey everyone, it's Atol again. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you'd like to support us in our mission to foster real dialogue, you can find us on most major social media sites, including Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter, Threads, and TikTok. Just search for the Fourth Branch Podcast with the numeric 4. Please reach out to us if you have a comment or an idea for the show. We mean it when we say we want to hear from everyone, and we're serious about including you in the conversation. Got a topic that you're passionate about? Hey, let's talk about it. We'd love to get you on the show and allow you to express your views. Once again, thanks for listening. Can't wait to talk to you soon.
No. I said I think that's a fascinating take. I want to. I'm just as guilty as the next person. It's easy to buy into the narrative that we have a resource problem because it looks that way. You don't have to. It just the appearance of it is there. So I would like to really dig into it. I'm just that kind of person by nature. But now that we've had a chance to explore this some, I would love to really understand more about how real is the threat, and that's unfortunately, with the nature of our media, I have become an ardent skeptic of anything that's reported on. It's just hard to take it at face value, and an example of that in the same vein is with energy resources, right? This idea that we need to be net neutral, right? The sky is gonna fall if not. Carbon neutral. I'm sorry. We need to be carbon neutral. The sky is going to fall if we don't solve this carbon emissions, and we're the biggest contributors to climate change. And if I dig into that just a little bit, right? So we're going to stop using gas and we're going to start using electricity. Okay, where does electricity come from? So electricity has to be manufactured somehow. Well, the most common way in this country are coal-burning turbines to generate electricity, by far 2/3. So you haven't solved the carbon emission problem by turning to electricity. And if that's the case, then what are we talking about here, right? Are we going to trade burning gas for burning coal ultimately, and that's supposed to have some real effect? Secondly, if you look at what it takes to make a battery, it is a environmental disaster.
Yeah.
And to get the elements that you need and get them refined so that you can make. I don't know if anybody gives a thought to where lithium comes from,
Right.
and how do you get lithium, and what are the effects of large concentrations of lithium being taken out of the ground. So it sounds nice, right? We're going to stop burning fossil fuels, but I'm a skeptic. Is that a real issue? Are we really on the brink? And should we believe this idea that we need to look at alternative energy sources? Is that even feasible? Like, is that realistic? And I wanted to pose that to you as well. Can we engineer our way out of our dependence on fossil fuels? And if I could take a step back, is our dependence on fossil fuels even a bad thing?
A lot to unpack there, so I won't even try a lot of it. I'll just go over first thoughts. Carbon footprint, and staying, neutral, reducing carbon dioxide emissions. You see how much they cared really about carbon dioxide emissions with the cap and trade type policies. Like,
Right.
Everyone in the world, go ahead and make the same amount of carbon dioxide. It's just as long as, you make a deal with somebody over there that's not, you're offsetting your existing, never stopping production of it. But,
right.
Being a amateur scientist, I guess, I would just say to people, don't worry about it, because carbon dioxide is not going to destroy the planet. In fact, it's quite good for everything that is living on the planet. Again, a purposeful pause there. Carbon dioxide is good for everything that is living on the planet, simply because if you like trees, if you like plants, if you like fruit, if you like vegetables, if you like anything that is grown from the earth, you need carbon dioxide. Bottom line. And then another little tidbit of, I guess, this speaks to my spare time that I have and how I use it. But I look at the population of the planet, and I analyze the total population that they say we have right now. And I want people to really imagine this. Think about the power of what I'm about to say, because it's real. Do the math yourself. You look at the square mileage in America.
Okay.
If you took every single living person on Earth and put them in a community as densely populated as Manhattan, you could fit every single person on Earth in Texas.
No way.
Every single living person on Earth in Texas, if it had a population density that of Manhattan. New York City. Excuse me. I'm not going to, sorry.
Wow.
I should be more specific. Manhattan's very large. New York City.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
Let's go on with that, because I thought I wanted to illustrate it a little better if I ever, again, hobbies. When was I going to share this?
Right.
I think I did in one useless venue, but anyway, if you took the entire population on Earth and you put them in a population density that of Greenville, South Carolina. Somebody, when you do this, go look at a map of Greenville, South Carolina, and see how completely non-population dense that is. You could put every single living human being in the southeastern states of America, from Texas to Florida. Let's let that sink in. Every single living, breathing human being on Earth. Now, let me also say, people, no. Okay, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
That is a horrible idea. It would be a fantasy for those like Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and those, for people to be like, yeah, let's do that. That's great. That's what they want. Okay, they want dense, controllable population centers where anything that goes in and out, including food and water, is controlled. Okay, so bad idea. I'm not promoting this. I'm illustrating the point that with the billions of people on Earth right now, there is absolutely no reason that we should have an issue feeding, clothing, or housing any of us. Because when you then take that percentage of land mass and how much you could fit us on, all of us, it shows that we are using the rest of the land mass completely inefficiently. it also shows you, it kind of makes an image of, are we running low on coal and fossil fuels? How much space, square footage, are we really heating and cooling during the summers and winters?
Right.
How much food is really being eaten? Now, the answer to that is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually utilize the land, not by monocropping and squeezing farming down to the smallest quote unquote carbon footprint you can, think about that. That's the priority. Squeezing farming and arable land down to a small carbon footprint, because we've been fooled into thinking that carbon dioxide is killing the planet. But this is not what this discussion is about. If we didn't focus on that, and instead focused on, wait a minute, we have all of this unused, untapped, unmined, researched land, millions.
So you see an inefficiency problem.
Precisely.
Okay.
It is. And why is it inefficient? And why do you have people coming up with fixes for it that are even more inefficient as they go along? It's because the goal was never to actually help the masses of people. The goal boils down to one of the flaws in being a human being, that we can be greedy, we can be controlling, we can be fearful, we can be dominating, and just, we can be awful beings. We really can. And that's what's creating a lot of this, and creating the perception that we're short on land, we're short on food, we're short on resources. If we're so short on resources, and that's what we need to regain American prosperity and bring our GDP back up, why did we shut down all of our drilling? Why did we shut down even the capture of these resources from already drilled sources?
So I can answer that. So the reason for that is to mitigate the environmental impact, right?
Right.
That's why we shut it down. We shut it down because animals are going extinct, plant life is going extinct, and all of this senseless, needless drilling and environmental destruction needs to be put to a stop. And I watch it every cycle in the United States. The left pushes for environmental responsibility and, shut down the pipeline, and it goes all the way from the far left, trees have feelings, to the more centrist left of, we need to be energy independent, alternative fuel, the more pragmatic voices on the left. And then on the right, it's the other way around. We have some would argue it's a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that our economy is strong, and our economy runs on energy. And in order to be able to maintain the economy, we have to have the energy sources that we need in order to be able to sustain it properly. And when you talk about eliminating or not controlling the cost of oil, what you're really talking about is the ability to deliver food, because you need gas to get food to places. What you're really talking about is the ability to heat homes, because 60% of homes are heated with natural gas. So it's not some feel good, save the trees. This is, you are talking about undermining the ability for our economy to operate. And you've got those guys from, the more pragmatic ones that, we kind of need an all-in approach, and wind and solar and everything, all the way to environment is a hoax, and we need to drill more, drill baby drills. You have those guys. So that I would say that that's what the common tropes are. I don't know how valid they are, but I see it every single cycle. There's this liberal environmental, we're going to get to, and this is something that I will take a side on. The idea of being of carbon zero is preposterous in my estimation. That is a ridiculous thought. And I've yet to see the science to demonstrate that we need to be carbon zero. I've yet to see that. I get the burning of fossil fuels, and I get elevated levels of carbon dioxide and how that might be affecting weather patterns. I get all of that, but I don't see where eliminating or trying to move away from, you got companies now that are trying to go to, we want to be carbon zero by 2035. And because what they haven't solved for me, okay, fine, you're going to put all the cities and all the buses in San Francisco are going to run on batteries. Fine. How do you get batteries? And when you explore that, you are as environmentally destructive, if not more so, than whatever it is that you thought you were trying to solve. So that I just don't agree with that. And I think that there's, but to answer your question, that's the rebuttal. The rebuttal is, we need to save the trees have feelings. So.
And I empathize with those trees. I really do. I am one of those nuts, okay, that when I when I have the privilege of walking through the woods, I feel like.
Are you a tree hugger,
I
Brian?
will hug the heck out of it. No, I've not actually.
Are you hugging?
Not since I was climbing it when I was a kid. No, I've never hugged a tree. But, they're living things. I respect them as living things. I do. And that's as far as I'll go with that. I do not have a problem with that living thing sacrificing itself so that people can survive.
Right.
One really important thing is when they talk about the destruction of the environment because of greenhouse. Well, it was greenhouse gases. I guess they gave up on. Oh no, it's still greenhouse gases. It was hole in the ozone.
Yeah, it's still greenhouse. Right, it was hole in the ozone. Right.
The ice age didn't come, so now things are warming up. And they are warming up, but it's part of a natural sun cycle, and most credible scientists understand that. It goes in cycles. You just track the weather patterns in the history of the world, like accurately through ice core samples and things like that. You see there's a natural ebb and flow, and it's tied to cycles of the sun. But what's really destroying our environment, When I say this, I really have to laugh and kind of look at it in a very "I told you so" kind of a way, I guess is the best way to to people out there who did laugh in my face. There are now at least 3 states. Listen close. There are now at least 3 states that are putting forth legislation to end chemtrail spraying over their skies. They're outlining in this proposed legislation the damages caused to their natural environment, trees, forests, people's gardens, the devastation to animals, the loss of plant life, the loss of animal life as a result of them spraying barium, strontium, and aluminum. So let me see. We got a brain eater, cancer causer, and radioactive materials going into the environment, sprayed every day. I got to laugh out loud, really loudly on this podcast. So when people hear this, they understand that this is what not me, many, many people before me have been saying for a long time. That's not a contrail. And any real scientist understands that's not a contrail. It's persistent. It spreads, it grows, and then particulates fall out of it if you watch closely. If you just analyze the number of airplanes that fly in the sky every day, we would never see the sun if those were contrails. Anyway, and it wouldn't matter what month of the year you're talking about. And planes, and they can't give me that altitude thing because planes fly everywhere from 10,000 feet to 50,000 feet. So anyway, I digress with my "I told you so" to the world. The minority of vocal people who think they know everything. 3 states against it, and they're outlining all of these destructive things to their water supplies, to their natural water aquifers being contaminated by these substances. Their vegetation dying off, trees dying off, and when that happens, well, guess what happens to the environment? You get more carbon dioxide in the air because the trees and natural carbon dioxide processing plant life aren't there to process it. So, some of it gets sequestered into the earth, into the ground, into water, all those kinds of things, but they're working against themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes to another question, which is an entirely different podcast that may never, ever happen. And that is why, right? Why spray these things
Right.
into the air? But I'm not going there, cutting it off right there. So the environmental destruction could be that we're seeing, the real die-off of different animals and plants could be curtailed immediately by just stop spraying poison all over the entire country and planet incessantly for the past 50 years. It ramped up because I remember days playing outside, many days where the sky was very, very bright blue, and it's not that bluish gray thing that we have now. It's just so gradual that people don't remember. They think when I was young, my eyes must have been better. Because I really thought it was a lot more blue than that during the day, and not this hazy baby blue. So yeah, a lot of that.
Somebody I find really really interesting is Elon Musk. He very smart man, a bit eccentric, and I listened to him talk about some of these subjects, and he talked about how easy it would be to desalinate water, to make sure that there's clean. That technology is existed for a while. He talked about how the expense, and I hope I got this right because I'm trying to do this from recall. I haven't seen this recently, but the expense in food would have more to do with transporting the food than actually growing it. We don't have a problem growing it. The cost is in getting it to getting it to people.
Fact.
And I think that there's something to be said about pushing back against these narratives. You were talking earlier about fish farms, and you don't need fish farms if the fish are able to grow in their natural environment, right? And the only reason they can't grow in their natural environment is because we continue to impose on that environment in some unhealthy ways because we don't want to face the fact that we need to address some. So I did not know this until I did a little research on it. There's a ring of trash in the ocean, right? A ring of global trash that is collecting in the Pacific. Now, how did it get there? And if you look at how we choose to treat trash, right, it's more of a nuisance for our society than anything else. And if you look at how we choose to kind of ignore that responsibility rather than deal with it appropriately, you can follow the breadcrumbs to how your bubblegum wrapper ends up in the ocean. And I think that there's an opportunity for us societally to say that, instead of having these silly arguments about stuff that really isn't impactful and really doesn't matter, and stop blaming the migrant crisis and oh, there should only be one car per household. All of these silly things that people are trying to argue for, and really start to get focused on some real solutions. I agree with your original premise. I think we're smart enough to solve these problems if we can resolve ourselves to solving the problem, and not going back and forth with these silly, baseless, pointless arguments that don't do anything to really address the problem. And I'm hopeful to see that we can get to a point to where we can start to push back against some of the things that you've highlighted today and start to demand food that you can grow, right? We don't need to treat water to the extent that we do, right? Our bodies we come from water, right? We're mostly water, and there's plenty of water here, right? We just need access to it. I think you highlighted some really good pitfalls, and maybe shedding light to some of these things can help us to galvanize around some real solutions, as opposed to picking sides on these petty arguments.
Agreed. Yeah, conversation, right? It goes back to our conversation on censorship, right? I mean,
Yeah.
If you can't talk to each other, if people are all defocused from the real issue and thinking about things that aren't really the solution, but they're great things to argue over, that's not helping any of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I like to say one more thing on the water issue. Again, it makes it so easy. The same people that say that they want to have security, I'll use that word because that's the catchphrase, right?
Right.
That want to have security in water supply are the same people that are pushing states to ban people collecting their own rainwater and purifying it and filtering it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want people to have clean, readily available water, then why would you stop people from doing it?
Why?
It seems like you would. Why wouldn't Bill Gates come up with the technology? And I'm not giving you any ideas, Billy, because he'll come up with it, and then he'll lobby the legislators to make it so that if you don't use his, it's illegal, and you're killing yourself and your kids. So,
right.
But yeah, it's people. We need to be able to communicate with each other. Stop being manipulated by the want to be a part of a group and be approved in everything you say. Be okay with being wrong, even. Just be okay with being wrong. I mean, I hope that my overarching take on a lot of this stuff is completely wrong, and that all of these people that are making these decisions are totally vindicated, and suddenly someday everybody has more than enough good, nutritious food, land, space, freedom, and they're not being sensible.
Right.
But I'm not going to wait for that.
Right.
Not going to wait for it. Right. You gotta be okay with being wrong. You gotta be okay with listening to things that might seem outlandish to you without dismissing them. As Dave Chappelle said, when you call somebody crazy, it is extremely dismissive.
It's dismissive.
Because you are not taking into account anything that they may know that you do not.
Right.
And that's dangerous. It's dangerous for everybody. Don't fit in. I guess what I'll say, to wrap kind of some of this up is don't fit in, don't fit in, find out. Because we're talking about our food. We're talking about our water. We're talking about heating and cooling our homes, during the winters and summers. This is not something where we should let partisan, political leanings have anything to do with it.
All right. Couldn't agree more. All right. I think we are at that point. Thank you again, Brian. I really do appreciate it, man. And we'll do this again.
Thank you, sir.